Have you ever really stopped to think about how we learn to read? It's easy to assume it's all about memorizing words one by one, but the truth? It's so much cooler than that. Learning to read is really about cracking a code that, once you get it, unlocks pretty much every word you'll ever see. So what is the secret code? Let's dive in.
Okay, so at the very heart of this code is something called phonics. You can think of it as the bridge between what a word looks like and what it sounds like. Phonics teaches us that letters and groups of letters stand for specific sounds. So for example, it teaches a kid to see the letters C-A-T, connect them to the sounds k, a, t, and then blend them together. Cat. It's just a beautiful logical system.
But, this brings up a huge question, a really huge one. If phonics is so logical, so effective, why on earth did so many schools spend decades teaching kids to do the exact opposite? To just guess at words based on pictures or what they think the sentence should say? Well, this is where the story gets really interesting.
Welcome to what they call the reading wars. And yeah, it really was a battle. For years, you had these two major philosophies fighting for how kids should learn to read. In one corner, you have phonics, and in the other, a method called whole language, which was based on this idea that kids would just sort of absorb reading naturally, the same way they learn to talk.
And what's really wild is just how long this debate has been raging. I mean, look at this timeline. It really kicked off way back in 1955 with this bombshell book that basically sounded the alarm about dropping phonics. And then for decades, you see these phonics programs fighting for a foothold, until finally by the 2000s, the science became so undeniable that phonics started making its big comeback. And today, it's pretty much the global standard.
This slide just lays out the difference perfectly. Phonics is systematic. It's sound-based. It gives a child a tool, the skill to decode any word. Whole language, on the other hand, is all about context. It encourages kids to memorize the entire shape of a word. And that's why it's so weak when it comes to spelling. See, with whole language, you're learning one word at a time. With phonics, you're learning the whole system.
So what was it that finally settled the reading wars? The science. That's what. Neuroscientists started to actually map what's going on in our brains when we read, and they discovered something absolutely crucial. Reading is not natural. We're not born with a reading center in our brains like we are for speech. We literally have to build it.
And this gets right to the heart of it. Phonics isn't just some optional teaching style. It is the very thing that helps a brain construct its reading circuitry. I mean, it physically creates new connections, new neural pathways that link the part of the brain that sees letters with the part that processes sounds. Without that connection, reading is always going to be a struggle.
And this breaks down exactly how that pathway gets built. It's so logical. First, you see the letter. Step 2, your brain connects that shape to its sound. Step 3, it blends those sounds together in order. And finally, boom, you recognize and read the word. Phonics is what trains the brain to make this process automatic and lightning fast.
I just love this quote because it hits the nail on the head. When a child learns just by memorizing, they're really just imitating. But when they learn through phonics, they're using logic. They're using intelligence to figure out a system. They're not just saying words, they are truly, actually reading them.
So this brings us to what this all looks like in the real world. What happens when a kid who is taught to guess runs into a word they've never seen before? And what about a kid who is taught to decode? Well, let me tell you, the difference is everything.
A reader who has to guess is always going to be limited. They need those pictures, they need those context clues to survive. The minute they hit a complex word in a book with no pictures, they hit a wall. It's why so many kids taught this way seem to be doing fine and then just plateau in the later grades. They can recognize the shape of the word elephant, but they have no idea how to spell something like enough. But a decoder? They have the keys to the kingdom. Because they understand the code, they're empowered to take on any new word they find. This builds such a powerful foundation not just for reading, but for spelling too. It creates these confident, independent readers who aren't afraid of a challenge.
Now, it's really important to get this next part. While phonics is the absolute essential foundation, it's still just one part of a much bigger picture. You can think of it as the engine, but it's not the whole car. Real, true literacy is built on a few key components all working together.
So the whole process really starts with just being able to hear the little sounds in words. That's phonemic awareness. Then comes the alphabetic principle. That's the core of phonics we've been talking about. From there, a child learns how to blend and segment sounds, decode new words, and finally, read smoothly enough to actually understand what it all means. See? Phonics is the critical link that makes the whole chain strong.
And ultimately, that's what this all comes down to. This was never supposed to be about skills versus meaning. Phonics and comprehension aren't enemies, they're perfect partners. Phonics gives a child access to the words on the page, and comprehension gives them the purpose and the joy of reading them. One without the other is just incomplete.
So after decades and decades of debate, the science of reading has given us a really clear path forward. Phonics works. It works because it aligns with exactly how our brains are wired to learn this stuff. So the real question now isn't what works. The question is, how do we make sure that every single teacher and every single child has access to this powerful knowledge? Now that is the next chapter we all need to help write.